Welcome in, everyone. My name is Gracey with Northern Astrology. Thank you so much for joining my live stream today. I am very excited to be talking about sports astrology with you all. Once again, I'm covering the Chiefs. No surprise there. Every single time that the Chiefs play, the Kansas City Chiefs, if you are not familiar, I can't just say the Chiefs and assume that, that's the only Chiefs team in the entire world. So the Kansas City Chiefs with the National Football League, the NFL for short, that is what I cover. And I cover a lot more than that. I'm also an astrologer that focuses on helping, I guess, myself to as much information as possible out there. I'm a constant student as well as a teacher, and I'm learning how to be the teacher more and more each day. So, finding the most obscure and random cosmic documents is kind of my specialty. So I've been diving into all sorts of things in this off season. It's not the off season for sports by any means, right? But it's my current off season, as I have just published my latest edition of the Northern magazine with my publishing house, Ninth House Publishing, and the amazing Mariah Guda. If you guys have not checked out this magazine, first of all, it's free, and there is over 50 pages of insight and information, including ways to ground yourself with the earth. I try to focus on them being as free as possible. So this one, we're talking about going barefoot and how grounding with Gaia herself can help all these things. But really, I just pour myself into each of these magazines. So, I might not be the best tweeter. I'm not always on social media. I happen to spend a lot of time in the real world where I think we should exist at the most, 80% of the time, I feel like, and we can dive into the mystic in our own free time. And my free time is that 20% window right now. So as much as I like to be strange and in the woods, like this shows, thank you for the compliments. I'm super excited that people think that this is high quality publishing, because it is. And I'm so excited that I'm able to do this. Last year in June of 2024, I officially found out my proper birth time, and my North Node went from the 10th house to the 9th house. And that was all the encouragement I needed to start my own publishing company. And yes, I'm not like some giant warehouse publisher yet, but I also have these guidebooks here that show a lot of what I do with the Sabian symbols. And it works for all practices and styles of astrology. The Sabian symbols are degree specific. So if you are dealing with a specific degree, or you want to look up specific degrees of your own placements, the Sabian symbols just truly unlock the magic of the imagery. And I say the imagery because I have so many 12th house placements in my chart. It's insane. I have so much Pisces, and then I also have my 12th house Chiron, which is like square my North Node exactly. And it's beautiful because I'm able to heal so much of this mess with a Gemini moon, and really seeing into how I can use my creativity to help disperse all of that energy, because I don't even know where it comes from. I have an Aries sun as well. So I just wake up every day at the crack of dawn without needing coffee 90% of the time. And I just go, and there's no stopping me. So once I figure out something that I want to do and something kind of unlocks in my mind, I go for it. And last March 2024, it seems like 10 years ago. It is insane how time flies when you're truly living what you're meant to be doing, and when you're living each day with purpose and trying your hardest to see the cosmic beauty in it all, right? Like, I cannot, beat people over the head with astrology and expect them to be like, oh, it is magical, everything's magical. I simply have to exist as a magical person. And that is my challenge to myself each and every day. I also challenge myself to be as open-minded as possible. I do not close my mind off to a lot of things. The only thing I'm not a huge fan of is artificial intelligence, and I believe that there's a better way to call a computer thinking for you. There's nothing intelligent about it, right? And I value people who dive into ancient texts. My next project is learning how to cast astrology charts without any sort of app, right? I want to learn. I have a Pisces Mercury, and I also have a tendency to read things backwards, do things backwards. From watching TV series, I'll watch the second season and then I'll be like, oh, I didn't see the first. Maybe I should go back and do that. I do it with books. I'll read the ending and then figure out if I want to read the beginning. I get that from my dad too, who also has Pisces and Aries placements. So, there's just so much about learning your cosmic makeup that unlocks everything. And if I can do anything in this world, I want to show others there's another way to live outside of waking up, paying taxes, and dying. And that's just what we do as astrologers. We dare to make the mundane magical, and we can correlate the mundane with the cosmic and help people kind of like find that. We get to be beacons and we get to be lights of information, and everyone has this in them, right? And it might not be astrology that you have that beacon of light in with you, within you. See, in with you. There's a perfect example of my Pisces Mercury. We just hope every single day, we meaning me and the council of frogs that lives in my head, we just hope that every single day my speech impediment listens to my reprogramming of my speech impediment and I get through sentences without completely butchering them. I also appreciate other Jupiter ruled Mercuries that understand my bountiful and expansive ways. It doesn't help that my Mercury's in the ninth house. So going into just being able to see the cosmic beauty in everyone, it really does help you manage and navigate the rest of the world better. I have noticed that my not only compassion, understanding, and willingness to listen is so much higher when you work with astrology. And last night was a perfect example of it. I'm not good in crowds. I have an 11th house moon and 11th house Venus. That does not mean I enjoy crowds, right? I also have a 5th house Pluto. So I'm like, I am the only one that has ever existed. Why are there so many people around me? It's so fun though to like go into crowds and just see how I'm doing. Cause like if you ever want a spiritual test and you have a particular known weakness, such as being around large groups of people, like it energizes me to the point that I love going to football games under the right conditions. But I have like all these levels of like steps that need to be taken care of before I'm like, yes, I'll go to that event. It's very ridiculous. And that's why a lot of people don't see me anymore. Ha! I am a homebody. Oh my gosh. Nothing beats watching things in the comfort of your own home. I am a Cancer rising through and through. As much as I want to talk about my 11th house moon, my chart ruler, it's like, yeah, I definitely love home. So nothing wrong with that. I get to live, breathe, stream, and do my job out of my home, which is where I am now. I'm in my office. I'm slowly making it my own. You might see tweaks and changes, but it's like I kind of like to view my growth with my office and my decor. You can see the whales in the background. Empress Atlantis has an amazing collage series out, and that is behind me. I also have her Bacchus print over by my back door because I just think that's funny if you know Bacchus mythology. And there's just like you can't see him. I'm really bad at the reverse camera thing, but you can't see him in total focus, but my grandparents are back there with my cousins here in Kansas City, and it's like one of my favorite pictures of all of us. And I have my horse over here, my very first horse, and all the horses that I've like randomly connected with over the years back there. And of course behind me there are pictures of my kids, and then pictures of me as a kid, and random knickknacks that people have given me, like my crow call from my friend Celeste, who is amazing. And I think hopefully, I don't know if she's able to watch the stream, but shout out whenever she is able to. But I have a crow call because I'm obsessed with crows. I decided to become the lady in the neighborhood that just has crows everywhere. And last year it got to the point where they were like showing up in droves. So I would apologize to my neighbors, but like I have done so much in my neighborhood to like make the neighborhood a better place. I feel like the crows are part of it. The other part of it was taking our horrible neighbors to court and telling them to be better dog owners because every dog deserves better. I also have a ton of 6th house placements. So like animals are very important to me. as much as the giant animals like horses and whales are important to me. So there's just so much in my background that tells you about parts of my life, including my daughter's artwork, which you can't really see, but that's okay because it's amazing and you'll get to see it if I ever move my camera. But there's just so much about learning yourself and like learning what makes you tick and learning where your passions lie. And like, of course, the North Node is very much lately has been talked about being this obsessive magnet point that you are just drawn to constantly throughout your life. And I fucking love books, right? You know, I've written a book. I think I have it over here with me. I've helped people publish books, and now they are well versed in the publishing process. Like, as a publisher, I like to walk people through what I'm doing each and every step of the way. And so if I'm dealing with like, I mean, not like the bullshit stuff like editing and dealing with like Amazon and Ingram Spark can be such a pain in the ass. If you guys know anything about self-publishing, it is like, oh, why did I do this? So we were lucky enough to have one of our books picked up with Barnes and Noble Publishing in March of this year. So we did republish, and now that's available globally through Barnes and Noble. So that's incredible. They also built a Barnes and Noble right by my house, and I'm so excited about it that I'm just like, oh, great. Now I have like so much books around me, and my ninth house placements, which are all Pisces placements, my Mercury, Ceres, North Node, and my Pisces MC. They all just love a good book and being away from people. That was my childhood, basically, was reading and staring out the window, being in the backyard, or just being alone playing with one of our random pets. So a lot of fun there, but truly knowing thyself is a superpower going forward. We are in 2025, what some of the scholars and ancients have looked at as some of the like turning points of the Kali Yuga. We are definitely surfing the waves. We are going through a lot of this. I like how my camera glitched when I said that. We are definitely going through some points of public reckoning. We're going through some revolutionary energies. So if you are feeling that, I am not just focusing on the Roman circus and peanuts that they hand out to all the Romans to keep them entertained while the battles go on, and they keep them distracted from what's actually happening with politics and everything else. I just don't really feel like being the one that awakens others. I think that everyone's going to discover things in their own time, and it's going to be this collective awakening that we kind of already are seeing already. Whether you're awakening to manipulation of the government or you're awakening to how much power we truly have as people. Like, our bodies are able to regulate themselves through breath and through meditation, and healing is possible from the inside out with changing the way you think and framing your thoughts, and knowing that you deserve success, you deserve comfort, you deserve security. And manifesting is not just like some crazy new age thing that you see girls doing and you're like, oh my gosh, what are they even doing? And they're like, I'm manifesting. And it's like, people make fun of it, but like, it's in the Bible and it's in these ancient books and it's in all these ancient texts that our brains are so much more powerful than we know. Lately, it's come out in science that they are just a giant neural network. And so nothing you've ever experienced has ever been a solo experience. You are being rooted on by realms of people that you cannot see, by generations in your family chart that you don't even know about. Each and every day that you continue to choose to wake up and have the courage and conviction to live is a beautiful day, right? It is so important in this day and age to have a mental escape, and not an escape in like a negative where, you're avoiding things and spiritually bypassing. Not that type of escape. Pisces placements. I'm talking to you, myself. I'm talking to myself with all my Pisces placements. It's all about finding a channel for your creativity. And I truly believe that like madness is driven through too much information and not enough ways to express it. This day and age, people aren't having the one-on-one in-person conversations like they used to. That kind of shifted around the COVID era. And, people are still not able to fully trust in what they hear and see because one thing conflicted the other. And they just have different opinions. And this is just such a magnetic time to truly pour yourself into what you love, pour yourself into the people you love. it is a scary thing to exist as a human. It is not something that is easy, right? We just wake up one day in these bodies in this place and we're like, oh, and then you develop this like stream of consciousness, and then you start understanding that like you are in control of your decisions, and the things that you do are kind of underlying energies that could be laying around in your body, and the ways that you express them are so powerful, and you have the ability to change it at any moment. But that's so hard to explain when we live in a world where we don't really focus on those kind of things. So I like to use my Sundays as not really a pulpit, because that would be playing into my ninth house Mercury a little too much. I believe that it's just a great time to share the things that are on my mind and get to the sports side of things when I can. I'm definitely going to be diving into the Ravens and Chiefs game here in a minute. So don't think I'm just going to be sitting here yapping about the spiritual. I just think it's really important to know that you can be in touch with cosmic energies without like needing to wear a costume, needing to like run away and join a cult, run away and, leave everything behind. You are perfectly capable of integrating in places that might have been wounds for you. One great example I shared in the latest Northern magazine. If you guys missed it, this is my fall equinox copy, and I share in little pictures of me, and it's called The Witch, and it talks about some really sad stuff, right? Like, I have been told in many different ways from many different people that when they read my social media or they see what I post on social media, it looks like I am just constantly positive. I'm constantly happy. I'm constantly sharing great news. I'm constantly making big deals out of things, or like I'll just put myself on every single issue of a magazine cover. Like I don't have a problem doing that. Like I said, that 5th house Pluto, 10th house Sun, and 10th house Jupiter is loud. I also have a Gemini moon. I love media. I love print. I love journalism. I love writing. I love expressing myself, but sometimes it's really hard to do that just for me. I feel like I need to share the things that I've gone through print and through different ways. So I shared a lot about my upbringing, where I didn't exactly have the easiest of lives with my parents' divorce and a sudden family member addition that my dad had when I was 7. And I'm like, oh, I have a sister, but I never see her because, okay, this is just a strange situation. So I really spent all my time, like I said, nature, animals, all that. And I wrote an ode to those animals and to the places that had kept me safe, as well as the people that kept me safe during those times, and really encouraged me to keep going. And I was raised very much by people that all went to church every Sunday, and my mom was the black sheep of the family that was just like, I'm good. I don't think I want to do that. And that was just part of her journey. And I think it's really cool that I get to be an outspoken spiritualist that has been on the news. I've been on ESPN. I've been randomly featured all over the internet, where people are able to see my sports astrology work, as well as just like ask, what the hell are you doing these days? Like, people think in Kansas City that I just disappeared, and they don't realize that I'm just like under a new Twitter account, and I just go by my real name instead of my initials now. So it's kind of been funny over the years to be like, oh yeah, I'm still here. I'm like, I announced my career change on the news, and I just think that's so 10th house Sun of me. So, and it's actually exactly sextile my moon. But I'm just so excited that like all my interests have molded into one. And I feel like I've created that through being able to embrace being called a witch. Like, I don't give myself that title. Other people have. And it's been fun to be like, yeah, I guess I am a witch. I guess, not that long ago, my ancestors would have gotten in a lot of trouble for being called a witch. And now I get to wear that openly, love the people that I love openly. And it's like the world is, in fact, getting better in some ways. So it's up to us to kind of carry that torch, and I look forward to doing so alongside you all. Let's get into the big breaking news of the week. Speaking of my appearances on TV, if you guys haven't found out already, I shared it earlier this week on Twitter. One of my amazing followers, Belly Jellies, has been a huge proponent of kind of like updating I think the world on the Kelsey brothers and their happenings, because I believe that we connected through Taylor Swift, and then it's like that her chart, obviously with an unknown birth time or a C-rated birth time, is always up for debate. And I learned so much through other people's either the rectifications and the things that they have had seminars on. Like I think Kepler College did one, and they did her chart to be a Pisces rising, which is kind of cool to think about. Hearing the Capricorn rising theories, I still think like Scorpio rising is very fitting for her, but we'll just see if it ever comes out one day. But one of the anonymous birth time collectors that a lot of celebrities have the birth time to on the all the like websites that you can look up people's charts, like astro.com or astrotheme. I'm accredited on a few of those birth times. I think I have like 4 or 5 now. So I'm like, oh, that's cool. It's my sports astrology work. And then, of course, my work with the housewives. And I love those women so much. So it's like getting to be the one that's like credited to finding out their birth time is so cool. But if you guys missed it, the Kelsey chart has been unearthed. And while I've had people asking me about this one for a while, I personally just don't feel like ordering a birth chart and doing all that work with the state as a genealogist or a historian or astrologer unless I'm related to them. So I just haven't pursued it. I like to go a little bit more ethical way and either ask the mother of the athlete or ask the person directly what time they were born. And if they answer, great. So just assume that any birth times that I do have, I have talked directly to that person or their mother and found out directly the birth time ethically through them. That's just what I try to do. No judgment. It's just simply what it is. Am I going to absolutely enjoy the fact that we now have Kelsey's birth time? Yeah, mostly because I don't know if you guys remember, September 2023, I was randomly chilling in my room and I think I was smoking a joint waiting on my man to come back with a lunch. And I get a text from one of my friends and she's like, Gracey, you're on Pat McAfee right now. I was like, no, I'm not. I'm in my room. What are you talking about? And it was my tweet about Taylor and Travis's synastry, which connected me to Amanda Sophia Nova on Twitter that was like, oh my gosh, this is not a drill. This is not a drill. Travis Kelsey, or there's Astrology on ESPN right now. And it was Kelsey and Taylor's synastry chart. And I was like, oh, oops. So, with that being said, I think it's great that we have a full circle moment because Pat McAfee was like kind of mocking the fact that like my tweet started with, since Travis Kelsey's birth time is unknown for now, give me time. It kind of seemed like I was gonna like stalk him down and do this, but no, someone else did it. So there's that. Now we have this beauty of knowing Travis Kelsey's chart. So because of that, we have 5:49 a.m. as his birth time, and that turns him into a Mercury ruled person, a mercurial, there we go. And Mercury happens to be exactly conjunct his rising. And you know what else is conjunct his rising? Is his Mars in the first house. So the Mars effect, we've talked about it on the show before. You can go back and find those where we discuss the 1950s study where people are like, okay, does Mars have any impact? Does Mars show up in charts of athletes? And is there any correlation there? And a lot of athletes had Mars on the angles of the AC and the MC. And that's how they were like, oh shit, maybe astrology is real. It's like, I think any astrologer could have told you that. I think we all know at this point, but it's really cool when you get to see Mars right there in the first house. I do remember like November 2023, I had mentioned that it would make a lot of sense if he was a first house Mars and Sun, just with the way that he expresses himself. I like to think that Libra risings are God's gift to the performing arts just because they have the ability to really get into character. And Libra risings, as much as, you know, Gemini risings have that airness about them, and Gemini is known for the drama, the two sides of the face, the happy and the sad, the mask, the theater mask. And Libra to me is just like such a show-stopping performer, and they can really detach from themselves and pour themselves into another character. That's where that Aries ruled seventh house to me can show up. But having a first house Mars is just so perfect for Travis Kelce. I think him truly being authentically and loudly himself with that Mars and Sun Kazemi, there is just so much about having him and his authenticity, his depth with that Venus in Scorpio ruling over his Mars and Sun and Juno. So I think it's really cool to see that there's so much about his chart that has already been loudly stated. Like I said, in November 2023, I mentioned that I think that Jupiter being in Cancer for him and that being in his 10th house would make a lot of sense, just because women are such a huge part of his life with his mother, as well as now he's well known for his association with the one and only Taylor Swift. So there's a lot to be said where he shows up in this world. I do want to read his Sabian symbols because I think they're very fitting. So 21 degrees Virgo is the karmic condition of what he is born into this world with, right? Like it's just what's going to happen naturally for him and what it's kind of like, what he's always known. And that is represented by a girls basketball team. This to me is just like the epitome of being a team player. Like this is like the degree that talks about sports in a way. Like it doesn't talk about football. When these symbols were channeled, it was 1925, so 100 years ago, and so football was barely getting started, and basketball had been around for a minute. So a girls basketball team was kind of like a radical thing for 1925. So there's all about the team being a huge focus, but then that's a karmic condition, right? So being a team player, being part of a group, being a part of a team, even like in a family, he was very much a part of a team where his mom and dad were not together essentially, but they lived together and they like worked together as a team to raise their children. So I thought that was really cool to see. And then the truth degree of his rising is a royal coat of arms enriched with precious stones. So this is all about lineage and ancestry, and while that can be a little bit of like, the truth is he's this like precious gem of his family. That's kind of what I'm seeing here with this. I also think this is about creating a lineage that is like essentially American royalty at this point. Like we have Taylor Swift and then her sports loving, Super Bowl winning boyfriend. And it's like, okay, I can see how that is definitely fitting for the two of them, as well as wealthy lineage. So the amount of wealth these two are going to have combined for the rest of their lives is definitely going to be on display for a while. And that's okay. He likes that and may not have always had that, with that karmic degree being more about teamwork and getting in where you fit in. The truth degree is about the 22 degrees of Virgo being all about this beautiful wealth and like eventual wealth through being radically yourself. It's all about this noble status. And even if that's just in your behavior, maybe it's just the way he carried himself and the way that he was gentlemanlike was what really stuck out. This is also one of my favorites because the next degree, the solution degree, is where my South Node is. So I definitely understand the energy of this area of Virgo very well. The 23 degree of Virgo is represented by a lion tamer rushes fearlessly into the circus arena. If you guys remember his little like ringmaster outfit, that's the first thing I thought of, just being in that like kind of like get up where it's like get out there and perform. It's very much ringmaster vibe. So is the lion tamer rushing fearlessly into the arena, just not always knowing what you're doing, but just doing it with as much gusto as you possibly can. If you are into the side of the dangerous side, this could say that he might be a little bit of a thrill seeker, might be a little bit more of a fearless Virgo energy than most Virgos are. Some Virgos are the type to kind of rush fearlessly into things because they've psyched themselves up so much. Others are just living their best life, and this type of energy can come out as expressing themselves to have this like radical skill and be able to display your skills on a grand stage as well. So he's quite the showman with this degree. Then, seeing his Pisces ruled seventh house, being married to an artist and having somebody that has that like Piscean energy is very important to them. Oh my gosh, we have Belly Jellies here. I should have guessed he was Mercurial because it makes sense his descendant ruler would be ruled by that Jupiter in Cancer. Also, the North Node in Saturn and Pisces transiting his seventh house makes sense with his engagement to Taylor and now opening a restaurant with Patrick. Absolutely. And because you're here, I will say that Kelsey's chart is very similar to Patrick's. So that's all I'll say. And if you guys wanted to dive deeper into figuring out Patrick's chart, I've left Easter eggs all over the place, but I am still going to ask his mother if it's okay for me to use his chart publicly as a teaching way, and I'll do a special episode on that when it comes. So since we covered Kelsey quite a bit with his, I've talked about how his being a hometown hero really shows up with that Venus and Moon in the third house, and being a local legend can kind of show up with any sort of Sagittarius placements in the third house as well. Travis and Jason having Mercury in their first house, and they have a successful podcast that keeps getting more popular by the day. Yeah, Travis and Jason having Leonardo DiCaprio and Benicio del Toro on their podcast, or what was it, Lenny Williams and Benny Dell or whatever that was incredible. So you can just tell the amount of just connection they have in their charts, and that's him and Mahomes as well. They just have so much of similar energy that it's like, oh, you guys are like twins. Got it. Just a month apart in a few years. I know Mahomes isn't nearly as old as Kelsey in football years, so I won't put that on him. But we do want to get going into the chart today of today's game. By we, I mean me, and once again, the council of frogs that live in my head and tell me what's next. And there's not actually frogs in there, I promise. It's just a human brain. But I do feel like I will cover his chart a little bit more when we get to the game chart today, because I do have his chart pulled up for the game. So very exciting about that. I mentioned on YouTube in my community post, if you guys are watching on YouTube, awesome. If you're watching on Twitter, hello. I hope it still works. Twitter's my favorite social media app, and then it's like the most inconsistent when I'm trying to stream, and I'm like, oh, well, at least it's not like Instagram where it would make me like get a stream key and do all this other, it'd be too much. But one day when I have a producer, right? One day I will have all the things in the world, and I'll be excited about that. Like I'm waiting for the day that they're like, hey, we accidentally saw what you were doing, and I think you should have a sports astrology show. And then I would just be able to, focus on that and develop my book eventually, who knows. So if anyone's interested, I'm down. Let's do it. I have studio experience as well as in my basement on my own camera experience. And it's high quality. Like, I appreciate the fact that, like, if I'm going to do something, I try to do it as well as possible. And that's kind of been what we've been doing with this whole sports astrology show, is just figuring it out as we go. Today, we mentioned, I think a lot of people have been talking about what's been going on with the Chiefs in general. I don't think it's really necessarily the astrology community being like, we need answers for the stars. But I mentioned in the YouTube community post that I noticed that today's chart is ruled by Saturn in the second house, and that Saturn is stationed retrograde, conjunct the North Node, and conjunct Neptune. So we are surrounded by God knows what ruling today's game, but it's at the diabolical degree of Capricorn, which is 18 degrees. Interestingly enough, I looked at another chart that had the 18 degrees, 18 AC, MC, IC, and DC, and it was Princess Diana's, and I'm like, damn, that's incredible. Hers was all mutable though. But that was a true grand cross. So this one, we do have the 18 degrees of Capricorn starting the show today, or kicking off today. So let's go ahead and look at that. Since we looked at Travis's, we got to do the same for the chart. That is the Union Jack flies from a new British warship. Could be a very patriotic display of some sort today. Who knows? The Chiefs are always up to something. I know that. I think Priest Holmes is doing the drum for today's game, if I have that right. 19 degrees Capricorn is the truth degree, and it's a child of about 5 carrying a huge shopping bag filled with groceries. This is the exact degree of my Capricorn Mars. And this is always a degree of one person putting everything on their back and really handling it. So I'm thinking this person could be Patrick. We don't know. But there's really something about today's game being like menacing. And the diabolical degree doesn't always have to mean something terrible or something like awful is going to happen, but it does indicate that it's going to be feisty. The 19th degree of Capricorn, like I said, in the Sabian symbols is a child of about 5 carrying all these grocery bags and being like weighed down. That is the symbol to me of somebody having to do more than they need. So yeah, like I said, I think that translates to carrying more than you're supposed to, maybe for the load of the game. Who knows? The beauty of this is the solution degree is Capricorn 20 degrees, which is a hidden choir singing during a religious service. So there could just be some beautiful music happening and you might not see it, but there is just magic happening behind the scenes. And we are going to see some maybe like miracle moments or miraculous moments. You know, this is the degree of background messages, voices not heard or noticed before, men and women in the church, sensitivity to spirituality, voices from nowhere, melodies from the past. So I don't know if someone from is going to sing some weird song from the past. I don't know. Hidden speakers, sheet music songs. So it's just very much about musical revolution or musical rapture and something taking over that's divine, which I think is really cool. So patriotism, one person carrying the weight of the game and singing and beautiful hidden messages, or maybe just a really powerful national anthem. Who knows? So those are the degrees for the rising of today's game. I like to look at the rising as the kickoff point. Obviously it is the kickoff point. Literally, this is when the game kicks off. It's also at the 9 o'clock position. So if you guys aren't aware, I need to get a pointer, but it's at the 9 o'clock position if you're looking at the chart like a clock. And that's where everything starts for the chart. So we do see Pluto retrograde as well as Pallas retrograde in the first house, which is intercepted in Aquarius. So intercepted means that there's 2 signs on either, or there's 3 signs total in one house. I do use Placidus. You guys can use whatever you want. I think Placidus is a little bit more accurate, these like little real-time like prediction kind of things, but who knows? I could be totally wrong. There's a way that Pluto shows up that is all about transformation. Of course, the personal narratives, the first house and the 7th house are really where we see personnel and people interacting and how people show up. So showing up serious and getting down to business could possibly be a little bit revolutionary today in certain ways. It could make or break somebody's career. We could see rookies come out, or people stepping up to the plate that we haven't seen before. Maybe they got rid of Jawan Taylor and now we have somebody new. Who knows? That's just every Chiefs fan's wish right now. Going into the 2nd house, which I believe to be pace of the game and the vocalization of players on the game. I do think that's where that Saturn is going to be at the chart ruler for today's game. Saturn retrograde and Pisces there in the 2nd house. I think that's where we're going to see people hopefully learn their lesson through the bickering and back and forth and showing how it like looks on the sidelines, especially with the Chiefs. This is also a lot about feet and keeping the feet safe. I know with Saturn and Pisces, that's all I've been talking about. But it's all about bones today with that, the knees, the bones, and the feet, seeming how Saturn rules over the bones, the knees, the skin. But Pisces, where Saturn currently is all about the feet. So it's merging those two and figuring out, okay, hopefully everyone stays safe today. And there's no misperceptions about footwork, or maybe footwork is something that's on display. I just hope that it's not broken bones, because I think we've seen enough injuries already to last all season. I'm over injuries, especially ones that happen when they're like inner team injuries. So going into the 3rd house, we do see Chiron also retrograde. And that is showing up, I believe, as possibly childish communication that has happened before. Maybe it's learning how to channel that properly, using that anger or rage properly, and not letting the mental frustration get you. That's huge right now for all of us, as these game charts are simply transit charts for everybody else, right? And so it's just a great reminder to be like, don't let the mental battle, where Chiron in Aries is one of the longest transits that Chiron has. So it can just be like, oh my God, am I ever going to get through this mental cloud? Especially if you have Aries placements or cardinal placements, late cardinal placements, squaring this or opposing this. It can be very, very tough. And sometimes people have, T-squares to this happening. So it's like, just be mindful of your energy, right? The fourth house is where we see the home team today. And Chiefs fans, I hate to break it to you, but this game, I feel like, has Uranus in the fourth house. I think we're going to actually score some points today. I know I frame that like it's like a bad thing, but the home team having Uranus in the fourth house, one of the followers that I talked to about sports astrology mentioned that the Bears had Uranus in the fourth house last game and they went off at home. So I believe that this is going to be a good sign for the Chiefs, as they also have their sun conjunct this Uranus in the fourth house. So I think big showing from the home team is going to be electric today. Then going into the fifth house, ruled by Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury. So the fifth house is ruled by Mercury. So is the sixth house. Seeing that, I believe that hands and catches are going to be huge today. We might see some like crazy miraculous catches. We might see the person that loses the game having just ridiculously drop passes and hand problems, or lung problems, breathing problems, arm problems. Gemini also rules the nervous system. So just inability to feel safe in the pocket, out of the pocket, whatever. Who knows? Having Jupiter there on the descendant at 22 degrees Cancer. This is a very petty degree of Cancer. It's not the 4 degree of Cancer, which I think is the pettiest sign of the entire zodiac. It just lives to argue. Lives to argue, or lives to like dare to be fought with. Like they want to like start fights and start little like spats. And then they want to be like, what? I don't know what you're talking about, and like run away. Who knows? That can be like the worst side of it, right? But 22 degrees Cancer is just as much of that. Like it's a Capricorn ruled degree of Cancer. So having Jupiter here, it's all about your inner authority, and it's also your inner safety. Having Jupiter in Cancer, as much as it is this like big, lovey, fertile, pregnant type of energy, it is also the securing of house, home, and the people you love. And if people make comments about other people's whatever, who knows, it could get pretty choppy out there. I just will say that Jupiter and Cancer at 22 degrees is not the overly like, I guess, jolly type of energy that you would think of Jupiter and Cancer. But I definitely see today being a little bit more nitpicky, and that's largely in part of that with Jupiter on the descendant. It just kind of amplifies any existing energy that's already there, right? Going into the seventh house, we see obviously the vertex at 24 degrees Leo, and that's going to be the VX right there. And I think that that's where we see Leos today making a big statement. That's also the degree of a man so enraptured with the spiritual loses sight of the physical. So if somebody hasn't been conditioning, we're also going to see that loudly on display today. Going into the eighth house, we see Venus conjunct the south node right there. And it's a loose conjunction, like 7 degrees, but it's still there in the eighth house. So, how do we think that shows up today? I'm looking at it kind of like, okay, Venus in the eighth house, Venus in Virgo is like hyper focused on details. They have a laundry list of a laundry list of another laundry list of ways they like things done, the standards they maintain. I am a Virgo, I feel like, with all of my 6th house placements and my south node and part of fortune and IC. And my sixth house stellium just like adds the spiciness to the Virgo energy. I understand Virgos so well. I empathize with them so well. I have compassion for them, just to know the amount of information and the amount of pressure they put on themselves. It's so much. So I feel like that's where we get to the depths here, right? It's whoever has fun with this game, whoever remembers to embody the physicality of this game. It's remembering that you plan ahead, you do the detailed work, stick to the plan, know the plan, be familiar with the plan. Venus in Virgo conjunct the South Node in Virgo, I feel like it's just an amplifying energy of whatever you have put your hardest effort into. The best way to describe Virgo energy is that story of the grasshopper and the ant, and how one prepares all summer long and one just plays all summer long. And then in the end, one is ready for the fall and one is ready to go into under the ground mode. And one is like, oh my God, what am I going to eat? How am I going to live? How am I going to survive? I haven't thought about anything. I feel like we are, and I can't remember which one is which. It's fine. I think it's the ant that like prepares and stays like focused, and the grasshopper is just hopping around. But that's what that energy is like. It's like, how much have you poured into the details of this? How much have you pushed past the uncomfortable conversations of what went wrong? How much were you able to look at yourself and be self-critical? That's another brilliant talent of Virgos, is being as critical of themselves as humanly possible. So I know this one was felt loud, and this one's definitely kind of like what's going to happen next. And this is for the Ravens as well as the Chiefs. The Ravens are not trying to lose this game either. So it's definitely like the preparation for it. But the thing that we've seen over and over again is that it's really hard to prepare for the Chiefs. The Sun in Libra, the Libra Sun, I couldn't figure out which way I wanted to say that. The Sun in Libra is right there in the 8th house too, with me looking like things are balanced in Vegas with that like Libra being the scales. I'm just like, oh, so things are balanced and this is an even game. Okay. But then we'll see with the game charts what that really looks like. But having the Sun in the 8th house, to me, looks like fairness is a huge factor here in today's game. There's no placements in the 5th house, which I believe is kind of like where the refs show up, and like wild gambling transits would show up. Like if there was Neptune in the 5th house, it's like, okay, you guys, who knows what's going to be happening here? I don't think anyone will, from the refs to Vegas to whatever. But seeing that 5th house is empty, also that 6th house is empty, that gives me hope that it's not about broken bones and stress and all of that today. I hope that the refs, with, Mercury ruling over the 5th and 6th house, we see Mercury in the 9th house today. So it might be that the refs are favoring the Ravens, since the 9th house to me represents the travel team. We also see Mars and Scorpio there in the 9th house, showing that it's like, this is personal for the travel team. This is a deeply, deeply, deeply sought after win. They might actually, I think they might actually burn themselves out on trying to get that revenge type energy, just because that 4 degree of Scorpio, 4 degrees is a Cancer degree, and Scorpio being very much a water sign as well as Cancer being a water sign. I think it's about some emotional petty depths, and I think that's where the travel team kind of like loses it. Having the MC in Scorpio, definitely having that being ruled by the Mars in Scorpio, I think that's going to be just a very on display emotional game today. Having that 10th house with Lilith and Juno conjunct in Scorpio, I think women are a big topic of today's game, where they're loudly on display, and maybe a different side to women. Maybe it's different women than we've seen. Possibly Taylor Swift is there. Maybe she's shown, maybe she's not. We'll see. I'll be watching. That's what I'll be doing. I'll be on Taylor watch. No, I'll be watching the game. And if she's there, that'll be exciting. But I promise I'm not going to like turn this into a Taylor Swift broadcast. I've already like talked about her a lot. So I appreciate everyone who's not always like the biggest Taylor fan, which I don't know how you can't be with her being such a Chiefs fan now, and caring about the Chiefs astrology. Who knows? You have your reasons. I just love that Vesta and the moon are both in Sagittarius. They're in the 11th house. That's where I think that she shows up loudly, being that like traveler and like worldly energy. that the crowd all needs, and maybe she could be our good luck charm for the Chiefs today. Who knows? But also having the moon in Sagittarius shows that the ninth house and the travel team might be showing up just as loudly today. Like we might see a lot of purple today in the stands. Who knows? We have looked at the game solo chart for a while, so let's go into the away team chart. All right, so we do have the Ravens here at February 9th, 1996. That's when they announced that the team was going to be the Baltimore Ravens. I don't know the lore of that. I just remember that it was the Baltimore Colts, and then the Colts moved to Indianapolis, and I didn't know if the Ravens had a team after that, or if the Baltimore had a team, not the Ravens. I didn't know Baltimore had a team. I don't pay attention to all that. The Chiefs history is where I topped out. It was really wild to have all 941 games that the Chiefs have played as the Kansas City Chiefs. That was my special project. So that's what I did. But going into this chart, we see so much happening for the Ravens that I'm like, okay, this is going to be a fun game. We see them showing up with Mercury, Neptune, Uranus. This isn't going to be accurate because it's a noon chart. Juno and their sun and Mars all in the first house. This is all Ravens, all in the first house. What a packed chart. Crazy. So with that being said, we see that packed first house, and I do think that they show up loudly. Maybe it's the Ravens that have a little bit of hard time with injuries today, or possibly that's where the foot and bone issue might come from. Not sure. But with such a loud first house, I remember that Kate, who's Astro Castalia on Twitter, had mentioned to me, like, Gracey, these are war charts. Like, a football chart is a war chart. So seeing all that in the first house, it's like, damn, all right, this is going to be very Raven-centric. But at the same time, I also see that as an area that's kind of like, okay, this is how they show up. This is how they present themselves, and they present themselves with a strong, united front. Let's see how that lasts, okay? So going into the second house, the Ravens are going through their Saturn return. Wild. Seeing a sports team going through their Saturn return is kind of crazy. I have not kept up with the Ravens. The only thing I know about them is Lamar Jackson's on the team. There once was a time where Gracey had all the sports insight. Gracey's me, obviously. In case you just joined and I didn't introduce myself and you didn't read the name tag, I'll just go ahead and point to myself. There was a time that I was like a walking ESPN scoreboard. I knew what everything was going on. I watched any game in any sport just so I could watch more sports instead of, I don't know, focus on the things internally that were going on within me. It was just, my Saturn return was realizing maybe sports media wasn't for me anymore. And that's when I got into astrology. So a Saturn return for the Ravens, especially in Pisces, that is all about foot health. That is all about deep spiritual lessons. That is all about what have you learned since the last time, right? What have you learned since your first go around? And since 1996, the Ravens have been quite a loud and dominant force in football. They have been terrifying with Ray Lewis on the team. You can, take that for what it is. Did he or did he not kill those people? Who knows? That's between him and God. But he sure loves to talk about God these days, and I can see why. He's trying to divert attention from his background. This could show up in a lot of different ways. Having your Saturn at 23 degrees Pisces, that is where my north node is. So this is a medium, a materializing medium, conducting a seance, and that's very much about this like otherworldly clairvoyance. So maybe they are gaining spiritual knowledge and they are just radically changing themselves from the inside out. Who knows what they're up to? With the North Node and Saturn and Neptune all conjunct that Saturn, I do believe there's a lot of clouds of mystery surrounding the Ravens, and their Venus also happens to be at the 0 point of Aries, which is where Neptune retrograde is stationed right now. The 0 degrees of Aries is known as the 0 point of astrology. It's where everything goes back and starts anew. This is also the spring equinox. So, March is surprisingly going to be a big time for the Ravens, that March 21st, 22nd, or 20th sometime. Spring equinox. So definitely interesting to see that their Venus is conjunct Neptune, and it will be for a little bit, knowing that they have that Venus and Aries kind of in the second house being the spiciness of it. I do think they might get a little bit hot-headed today, and especially with that south node in Aries as well, and that is loosely conjunct Chiron retrograde in the third house. So I think it's all about mentality and communications today. Whoever keeps the coolest head is going to be able to get ahead. Having a Mars ruled third house and then having Mars over in Scorpio, it's gonna be heated. This is not just gonna be like people being like, oh, it's been really nice, we haven't seen each other in a while. It's gonna be like, excuse me, we hate each other and we're trying to beat the shit out of each other, so let's get a move on. And it's about whoever can keep that, internal balance and that internal rhythm. The Ravens don't have anything major until the ninth house, which is where their Chiron, Moon, North Node, and Pallas Athena happen to be. Pallas is conjunct Scorpio, or Mars and Scorpio, and that can be very much about an awakening or a new type of information or new type of insight, or possibly even root work. Who knows what the Ravens have been up to, but I know what it shows up as in human charts. So this is all, once again, a learning process with the sports charts, because I am going on my own path and I am trailblazing and I have no idea what will happen. I just continue to learn with the process as much as I can. Sometimes I go back on the charts from the previous games and try to look at the notes and things that I mentioned. So we'll just see what happens. But all of that in the ninth house for the Ravens, I do think, is about finding that inner balance. They're going to have to find that balance between pushing themselves and resting themselves. They're going to have to find that balance of like truly knowing when it's time to leap forward or when it's time to reserve their energy, being decisive. And they might have some problems just with today having Mercury and Libra in that ninth house conjunct the moon. Maybe they get a little bit too emotional with the way that they communicate. Maybe they are like spewing their emotions everywhere, or they come out really hot-headed, and that would be just kind of, to me, that overly critical thing, since that's that Venus ruled ninth house, and Virgo Venus is where that ruler happens. Yeah, Venus and Virgo is where that happens to be. Tongue twisting. Pisces Mercury, it's so fun. But having that rule over the ninth house, I do think that's where the preparation and maybe they weren't prepared, or they aren't able to get prepared, or the preparation is what leads them into victory. It's going to be interesting to see. And once again, I'll be learning. Going into that 10th house, we see Vesta and Pluto there for the Ravens, and Lilith and Juno for today's game. Pluto in the 10th house, I do think it's transformation of self, possibly on this like grand stage, as that is the 10th house and the public image and the spotlight of today's game. Maybe it's a transformation where the Ravens get rid of personnel after this. Maybe they get rid of some coaches, or maybe they make changes at personnel after this game or during this game, or something happens there. Going into the 11th house, where today's Vesta and Moon are, they do have Ceres conjunct Vesta, and once again, I'm learning all the asteroids and how they show up in sports astrology. So if anything, this is nurturing their legs and how they keep their feet and legs going, just because I do think the Chiefs are going to run them ragged. Going into the 12th house of today's game, we see Jupiter for the Ravens there, and I do think that this is their subconscious relationship with authority and how that shows up for them today. If they have a blind spot with it, if they are able to see past it, if they've decided, I am my own authority, I make the rules, I am going to show up loudly today, and we are not going to be ran over. Jupiter in Capricorn can be a very forceful and very driven type of feeling and energy. It can also be a lot of blind faith in the people leading you. So we could see players frustrated with coaching, possibly. and maybe vocalizing it because Mercury is right there in the ascendant. So we got through the Ravens chart just because I try to be. I'm laughing as I say this because it's like I try to be as non-biased as possible. I'm out here just trying to like be like, hey, everyone has an equal playing field. I haven't predicted the Chiefs to lose just because I have a feeling I usually won't. Um, I want to learn, of course, but I'm a Chiefs fan through and through, and I have rarely picked them to lose. And when I did, I think it was like the Denver game last year, and I should have picked the Buffalo game I had a dream about. And I had a dream that was like, Taylor's so sad. What am I going to do to comfort her? And I'm like, well, that's not your job, first of all. But knowing that that's like what happened in the dream, I'm like, I need to listen to my dreams more. Lucky for you all, I had no dreams about football. So we did not have any prophecies come through. I was just dreaming about other things and people that I have no idea who they were. And they're like, you don't know who I am. And I'm like, you're right. I don't. Can I move on now? But having, so much of the Ravens in the ninth house as well as the first house, I think we are going to see a solid performance from them. So buckle up, everyone. This is the Kansas City Chiefs chart from May 22nd, 1963, when they announced that they were coming to Kansas City and they were founding a team, and the team was moving from Dallas or Houston, I can't remember. Yeah, Dallas Texans. There we go. And coming to Kansas City. So this is the chart for the noon chart of that day. We see over here that Chiefs have their south node right conjunct the ascendant. So I think this is going to be a very familiar game for them. This is going to be something that they're comfortable with. Take a minute here and look at the chart and let me know if you have any comments. I can see, I don't know if you guys are watching this on X or Twitter. I will always call it Twitter, but or YouTube, where people are watching there. I can see that. I can't see all of the like metrics, but if you have any comments about this, if you do want to like chime in about the charts, please feel free to. There's always ability to comment. So check it out, and I'll be here drinking water and coffee. All right, I have saged myself. The south node right there on the ascendant is where we last mentioned the Chiefs being comfortable and kind of showing up like, hey, we know what this is going to be like. Having that Pluto in the same sign as their Saturn, I don't really see being too impactful for today's game. I think that Pluto in general is just all about that shift and that revolution and that transformation and how you grow and change and maybe go into yourself. Maybe it's a little bit of whatever team isn't really all there, which obviously the Ravens are all in on that first house. There's going to be something absolutely transformational about today's game. And it's going to be a shift for either side, and having the Chiefs having their Saturn in the first house, I do like to say that's all about giving that boost and giving that stability and giving that like, okay, we got to go with time. I think time management for the Chiefs is going to be huge today. There is definitely, oh, hey, Luna. Lamar and Derek are both Capricorns, so they both feel that they have something to prove. Absolutely. And Derrick Henry having the fumbles. Definitely a lot to prove today, and it's going to be deeply personal for the Ravens. And that's what I noticed on their chart. I was like, oh, I think they're going to be quite intense. The Chiefs with their Chiron and Pisces, that has been rough with the North Node just magnifying that. I think the kicking and problems with kicking have definitely come from maybe a visit there. Who knows? Just the North Node in Pisces being there in the second house with their Chiron as well as their Jupiter. With today's game being on the inner wheel, you guys can see how their kicking could be a problem with the pacing and the head-to-head competition of today's game. The second house being the traditional home to Taurus, and Taurus being the ruler of the throat and the vocal cords and the vocalization of things. Maybe they express frustration with the feet, or they have channeled some sort of inner strength, which is also very much formidable Taurus second house energy, and they've strengthened their kick. So that's definitely going to be something that we can see today if that's shifted at all. The closer that the North Node gets to their Chiron, who knows how it's going to go. Harrison Butker is definitely a controversial figure in many ways for the public. So I can see how there's a lot of pressure and a lot of eyes on him. Jupiter for the Chiefs and Aries, I do think it's about being able to survive that mentality of everything being on fire and letting the anger get the best of them. We talked about Jupiter and Capricorn being about consolidating your relationship with authority and authority figures, as well as becoming your own inner authority. And Jupiter and Aries is like begging to become more childish, not in an immature way, but in a infuse your wisdom of learned wisdom back into parts of yourself that didn't know any better. And it's about learning from your past mistakes. And Aries energy is so much of our start to life and our beginnings and where we start fresh, where we start anew each year. So having Jupiter and Aries can be very much a lot of immature energy. And I think the Chiefs have had that for a long time, but it's like how they grow into that, right? So after a few Jupiter cycles, you really start to grow into your Jupiter. So that's why I do believe that the Chiefs are maturing with age. That's why they've gotten better with time versus worse. Their Saturn at 22 degrees Aquarius doesn't hurt either. Having the third house where Chiron is, where we talked about managing anger and channeling that wisely, vocalizing it or saying it out loud can be one way to channel it, but hot mics are always around. So it's like people truly expressing their anger could very easily happen today. Who knows? But with the Chiefs, since we're focusing on their showing up in today's game, with their Venus and Taurus at that Cancer degree of 4 in the third house, it's all about their nurturing mentality and how they channel all these like entanglements, all these arguments that have been happening on the sidelines, all these stories being written about the back and forth on the sidelines as well. All these things, it's like, how do you channel that outside of you? How do you use that for the good? And Venus and Taurus is going to be all about taking care of that physical body, nurturing that voice, making sure that voices are heard, people feel heard, and they feel understood, they feel safe and secure. Creating a locker room of security and a tight-knit locker room is really key for Venus in Taurus. They like to feel cozy, comfortable, and a part of enough of a thing. They don't need to be a part of everything, but it's very much about making whatever is yours as cozy as possible. Seeing their Mercury in Taurus, though, that formidable, rigid Mercury in Taurus placement, also station retrograde, conjunct their moon in the fourth house, as well as their sun in Gemini in the fourth house. That is where I am seeing a lot of the positive luck for the Chiefs happening today in the fourth house. We talked about Uranus in the fourth house of the Chicago and Dallas game, where Chicago just blew the Dallas Cowboys out of the water. Uranus was in the fourth house of that game. And with the Chiefs having their sun right there, it is a little bit about their core strength. So if they show up as a, the twins energy, you want to talk about polarity, you want to talk about two sides of things, you want to talk about the black and the white, the positive and the negative. It's about merging those into one, right? And one consciousness, yet varied points of view, is very much what Gemini is all about, as well as like having like all these types of downloads, messages, thoughts coming through your head in a way that you might not be able to understand. Gemini placements are very, very psychic when they stop the chatter inside and learn how to silence that. And then they can start listening to the outside and be like, what is this? What is this wide world of downloads and cosmic adventure? So very much that childlike, the playfulness of the twins, but it's like twins being a huge theme of two sides, mirroring each other or completing each other. So definite personal connections like that, a little bit more electric with that 1 degree of Gemini, that being an Aries degree versus the 0 just being this neutral, like, okay, how do we do this? How are we going to embrace this? Having a 0 degree planet in your chart to me is having like an open portal of two signs. And so when people are like, oh, I'm a cusp, and I'm like, no, you're not. You're a 0 degree or a 29 degree. What are you? And so when they're like, oh, I'm actually a 0 degrees Pisces, I'm like, that's why you feel, because you're like this open portal between two signs. And it can be very much, what are you going to choose? And with Taurus and Gemini, that's very much, are you going to be rigidly stuck in the past, or are you going to be too focused on the future? That can be Gemini is too focused on the what's next, that anxiety feeling that we all have. And, being able to embody that in the sun, conjunct Uranus, we'll see how that happens. But I do want to say that I think this game is going to be high scoring for sure. But it could be just high scoring, but a close game. So I'm just trying to figure that out as we go. When we look at the tri-wheel, then I will make my opinions. Going into that 5th house and 6th house, just like the Ravens, the Chiefs do not have anything there. Interesting. They do have their North Node conjunct Jupiter in Cancer. So if there's anyone that's going to win the petty war today, I do believe the Chiefs might have an advantage there. Going in with their Mars and Uranus in the 7th house as well. That could be all about the personal overcome, the battle of whatever is the back and forth. To the victor go the spoils. The 8th house is where we see Pluto, and obviously we have a lot of other stuff in there too, but the ascendant is not accurate, as this is a noon chart for the Chiefs. Ceres, White Moon, Lilith, Juno, and Vesta all in there. Very interesting combo. So we can see how that kind of plays against the Ravens' 8th house energy. Going into the 9th house, nothing for the Chiefs. Going into the 10th house, we have Neptune retrograde in Scorpio, conjunct the MC, which is interesting to see, say the least. This is going to be a rooted performance, I feel like, for the Chiefs, and this is going to really be, I feel like this is a turning point for them for sure. Having the Neptune retrograde conjunct the MC, and also, we're looking at Neptune in Scorpio and the MC in Scorpio, and that being ruled by Mars, and Mars also being in Scorpio. So this is definitely a rage-fueled, very emotionally charged game once again. There could be a little bit of deception about the Chiefs. They could pull out some things that the Ravens could not have prepared for. That's kind of what the Chiefs are known for. So when they have Neptune on the angles, it's really like a miscalculated thing for their opponents. Seeing that the Chiefs also do not have anything in the 11th or 12th house, I do think this is like a less of a trap game for them. This is going to be something where this really solidifies the Chiefs moving forward. And I think that's why I see so much of the Chiefs being the winners here, right? So let's not waste any time. I know you guys are busy people. I appreciate each and every moment that you're here watching this with me. I don't think I know how to express the amount of love that I've felt just being able to share these and having people watch and follow along and share with me. My DMs are open. You can always DM me. Unless you're being weird, then I'm not going to talk to you. When people are talking about astrology, they want to ask questions, or not questions like, read my chart, tell me when I'm going to meet my boyfriend, or when I'm going to meet the love of my life. I'm like, all right, when you become the love of your life. I don't know. My synastry work is some of my favorite work, just because I love using Davison charts and truly merging people together. So I do love synastry, but random questions, about your chart in my DM is probably not going to be like answered until I have time, and who knows when that is. I love yapping about sports astrology. I'm always here for questions. I'm always here for insights, or if you want to share something that you learned and you're like, hey, maybe this will help you. I want to do more of that. So a lot of the things that I look at with synastry, obviously it'd be really freaking hard to show a tri-wheel with aspects, right? So you just kind of have to learn that, right? So if we're looking at the aspects, a lot of the Ravens' ninth house aspects are squaring their 12th house and first house aspects. So I do see that's where the anger can come in for the Ravens today, and maybe go a little bit above and beyond what is expected for them, or they wear themselves out or hurt themselves, like just displaying that a little bit more. I see here in the first house that the Chiefs having that Saturn there, and it's conjunct their Sun and Mars. That's going to be a very interesting energy, because I do think Sun and Saturn aspects are some of the harshest aspects in sports astrology synastry. So very interesting to see how that plays out today. So these are two teams that like really grind it out with each other, and that's what it's felt like the entire time that they've played each other, because these are two teams that have some really I would say not debilitating energy. I would say that these are two teams that have some conflicting energy, and also which one is going to be the student, which one is going to be the master, which one is going to be the one that learns the lessons, which one is going to be the one teaching the lessons. So that's kind of the energy between these two teams. Going into that second house with the Chiefs having Chiron and Jupiter in the second house of today's game, and the Ravens having Saturn and Venus at that 0 point of Aries in the second house of today's game. I am obviously going to say the weaknesses for the Chiefs having Chiron there. It's always going to show you your weaknesses, and also how to like heal your, I don't want to say fix your wounds, because there's nothing wrong with you, but healing your wounds is a lot about what Chiron is about, and also showing you the way through to healing is through these hardships. So like, for example, Chiron for me is in my 12th house in Gemini, and that is very much shows up as my speech impediment, and I wasn't able to be understood or heard clearly, and that triggered a lot of my like not being seen and heard. And then I saw this thing, and of course it's on TikTok, of the sign or the jobs that show you that signs of like childhood neglect, and one of the top ones was sports media, because I never felt heard or seen. And I'm like, damn, they just called me out, huh? And that's when I knew it was like, astrology's so real. No, that's not when I knew it. I knew it a long time ago, knowing that, that's like what lives in us and what can happen with Chiron. The Chiefs having Chiron in Pisces, it shows me a lot of weaknesses through the feet. There is a famous kicker in Kansas City that like multiple seasons, there's always like that infamous kicker that screwed up a Chiefs season or ruined our chances at getting into another game or whatever. And we have gradually healed that, like from, I think, the 2010s on. We really have focused on having incredible footwork, whether it's punters, kickers, whatever. It's been way more of a change, and it's been nice. But yeah, having those kicking problems last game doesn't make me super confident with that for the Chiefs. So with Saturn and Venus in there for the Ravens, I do think that they have a little bit more discipline when it comes to pacing of today's game. But the Chiefs with Jupiter and Aries, they have to overcome a lot of the mental and just the grinding frustrations of going against a well-oiled opponent like the Ravens, even though the Ravens have had their fair share of problems too. Going into the third house, we see the South Node for the Ravens exactly square today's rising for the game. And I think that's where we might see some problems of communication breakdowns. Like I said, the anger is just like kind of like very loud here, and the Ravens are going to be frustrated. They're going to be playing frustrated, and that's where the Chiefs can kind of have an advantage there. So who knows what that's going to look like. But the Chiefs having that Venus in the third house loosely conjunct Chiron there, and the Ravens having their south node conjunct Chiron there, and Chiron retrograde. Chiron spends so much time in Aries. It's like every whenever many years Chiron goes into Aries, and we all have to focus on wherever that is in our charts. And it's so much. It's in my 10th house, intercepted in my 10th house. So I'm learning so much about my life in the public eye, my ability and persona in the public eye. So if you see me doing one thing on Instagram and another thing on Twitter, it's because I'm figuring it out. I'm learning what I want to be as a public front-facing person. So it can be very much a time of learning and growing, and also the weaknesses I have of being in the public eye. Just because I have a lot of 10th house energy and 10th house placements doesn't mean that I'm super comfortable. It's also intercepted most of my 10th house placements. So it's like, oh, great. But it can be very telling how that shows up in your chart. So wherever Chiron is transitioning in your chart, wherever Aries is in your chart, that's where Chiron retrograde is right now. And it's really unearthing those mental wounds for a lot of people. That's why I do think that there's a lot of focus on mental health in this country, the United States right now, as well as globally. I think globally we're realizing how much it comes down to being strong enough to have your own thoughts, make your own conclusions, and keep an open mind. It's a superpower, like I said at the beginning of the stream. So I'm really excited. I'm ready for Chiron to move into Taurus because I mostly blame that Chiron and Aries transit for the raise of these weird male podcasters. Oh my God, that's too funny. Belly Jellies is great. That's the best. Yeah, Chiron and Taurus is all about like body issues though. So I'm not really ready for that part. Also about people, how they vocalize things. So I think people are going to start to realize words are powerful in the way that they say things, the way that they do things. The words they speak are going to be super powerful when Chiron goes into Taurus. So maybe we got rid of the body image and insecurities about the way our bodies look with the last time that Chiron was in Taurus, because I feel like more and more each day people are accepting how they look. And it's been my personal vendetta to not use any filters or photoshopping on the pictures I post, because it's like, Gracey, why? People know what you look like. You're on camera. Like, so if people want to zoom in on your face, just make sure your face looks like you want it. It's fine. But it's just definitely been a transformation of like, okay, how do I show up? How do people see me? And it's been just all about the realness of it. So I'm excited to see how the last few degrees of I'm just ready for Chiron to be out of Aries. Let's be real. Yeah, I'll take the insecurity possibly about how we vocalize things and people transforming the way that they speak, and stop using vocal fry. That's if I could do anything in this world, I'd be like, stop using vocal fry. Stop talking like this just because you think it sounds cool. You're ruining your vocal cords. And that was just, I think that's so raw, because whenever I go to youth sports and I'm surrounded by like the soccer moms, football moms, whatever it is, moms, and I just hear the vocal fry, I'm like, you are ruining your voice. Not my problem though. I just wish more people would stop doing it. And maybe this is the awakening of authentic vocal cords with Chiron and Taurus. I'm looking forward to it. Going into that fourth house, like I said, the home team, Chiefs have a lot of energy stacked up in there, right? We do have a pretty strong showing for the Chiefs today. Mercury retrograde isn't the best thing to show up in a sports chart, but with proper usage, you learn how to use that properly. I think that's why we're having like so many different eyes on all of our spats on the sidelines and everything else. Like, we're going to have some hard-headed opinions. Like, that to me screams, yes, the Chiefs do have that Mercury retrograde in Taurus, because that is about having like, I'm right, you're wrong, and there's nothing you can do about it type of energy, let alone having that conjunct an exalted moon where you just feel that you're right all the time, or you are somebody that could come off as a little bit of a know-it-all, or somebody that like just feels like they just are naturally just this like radiant, like lightful being. And at the same time, Moon and Taurus being exalted could also be a huge blind spot for people. So their emotions could also be a very big blind spot for them. And embodying that Venusian energy with the moon can be difficult, especially when your moon is ruled by Venus, and Venus is in Taurus. It's home. So it's like, yeah, I answer to myself, basically. Going into the 5th and 6th house, like I said, there is nothing there for the Chiefs or Ravens. So that'll be interesting. The North Node for the Chiefs is conjunct Jupiter in Cancer, that 22 degrees. So I do think that they will be coming out of this matchup victoriously in a positive way. That is one indicator, just because that is that head-to-head thing. Then we see a cool white moon, Pallas, and Lilith conjunction all in that 6th and 7th degree of Leo there for the Chiefs and Ravens. But more importantly, the vertex for today's game is at 24 degrees Leo, and that is exactly where the Chiefs' Mars is. So I do think this is going to be a heartfelt performance for the Chiefs against the Ravens. I do have the Chiefs winning today, so if that's what you're waiting for me to do, there you go. I'll get to the numbers and signs to watch here in a second when I put you guys on mute and I just think about numbers and try to do math. The Pluto and the asteroids in the middle for the Chiefs are there in the 8th house. And then for today's game, we have that Venus and South Node conjunction in Virgo, which we talked about being very nitpicky, very detail oriented. But also the beautiful side of that is like the beautiful side of Virgo and their over planning tendencies, or they're kind of like, I'm nervous, so I'm going to like figure this all out 10 days ahead of time for little to no reason other than my own personal sanity, which is actually not sanity, because if I have to think about things 10 days ahead of time, what am I even doing? You know, they plan ahead, and things can really be great when you let the natural flow that Virgo doesn't really have, when you embody that other side of the earth goddess sign. Virgo is very much the feminine form of the virgin is a great way to put it. That immaculate feminine energy, the divine feminine energy. And so when you learn how to really flow and trust that everything for you comes to you, that's when I think you crack the Virgo Venus code. And when you learn not to carry the weight of the world on you, when you learn not to carry around what's happened to you on you, when you drop the formalities of things and you truly become your earth-based, crunchy almond self, whatever that is, or your nature witch self. Like, you don't have to be this like strange hippie in the woods to be embodying Virgo energy. It's like people who show up and they show up for their health every day, and they show up for their gut health as well as their physical health. They show up for their mental health. They're all about these health-based and health-centric signs. So it's really about how you embody each day of your life. Do you want it to be hard? Do you want it to be a battle? Then don't prepare for anything and don't plan ahead, and then you'll have a battle every day. People who are perpetually late but have Virgo placements, it's because they're not like using their Virgo superpowers of like knowing when to do everything and trusting their gut. If they don't have a healthy gut and brain connection, then there can be problems. It's just like, it's learning what health means to you. The Libra sun in the 8th house is not really connecting with too much in the Virgo chart, in the Ravens or the Chiefs chart. But when you go into the 9th house, which is where I like to see the travel team show up, we do have the placement for the Ravens, the Chiron retrograde in Libra, as well as their moon and north node conjunct Mercury, as well as loosely conjunct the sun. So we are going to see some of that master class of balancing energy and, okay, the adjustment and the scales of tipping, and the Ravens trying to what I think is kind of like outrun or outperform any of their weaknesses. So I think that's what we're going to see for the Ravens, and with Mercury and Mars being in the travel team house, with Mercury being in Libra and at that Leo degree of Libra, and then Scorpio, or Mars in Scorpio at the Cancer degree of 4. I think that this is going to be an emotionally volatile game for the Ravens and how they show up. And I think it's going to be about them overcoming their anger, or overcoming their outbursts. So we'll definitely see how that plays out. But, that's just kind of what I see here. The 10th house being ruled by that Mars and Scorpio. It's going to be all about that back and forth, that courageousness, that the intensity of Mars and Scorpio, and that ruling the 10th house. I think this game is going to show that intensity and that powerfulness, and maybe the deep, dark, brooding side of it too. Who knows? The emotional depths will be loud. Then we see that Pluto in the 10th house for the Ravens. And I think that, once again, transformation. The Chiefs have Neptune on the MC. So how they show up, and, the cloud of mystery and what they're going to do today is always so wild. And I think people could be very disillusioned with them, and they could see them with rose-colored glasses, and I'm totally guilty of that as well. So there's very much a chance that everything that I've seen and everything I predicted here is completely off, and then I get to learn about that and grow with the next one. So we'll see how it goes. The moon is in the 11th house today in Sagittarius, and that is making loose aspects, squaring the south node. So if things kind of feel a little bit like, I don't know if this is as expansive as I like, or I don't know if this is as powerful, or, as emotionally charged as it usually would be, they could kind of feel a little bit emotionally restricted. The game could just kind of feel a little bit emotionally restricted. And then we also have, over on the flip side, we have that moon trining that Chiron retrograde as well in the 3rd house. So communication could be very loud, very over the top for many reasons for the entire game. So it's not just going to be the Ravens being vocal. We're definitely going to see that from both sides of the ball. So very excited about that part too. So that's the tri-wheel of today's game. Let's go ahead, and I'm going to take a quick second and go over the numbers to watch for on my handy dandy post-it, and signs to watch for. All right. So I went ahead and got some numbers together, and we're going to keep going with these numbers because I'm going to be adding to them as I look at the charts. But I do think today's game is going to be going with the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs win by 5 points. That's going to be my answer. 5 points. Chiefs win. That is my live answer. I'm getting that to that conclusion because of the moon, so we'll talk about that in a second. But my numbers to watch for are 1, 5, 18, 24, 55. And 48 could be a thing. 36 could be a thing. Derivatives of 5 could be loud, and 1 with both Pluto and Uranus at that 1 degree, as well as the part of fortune in today's game being in Aries at 5 degrees and the vertex being at 24 degrees Leo. That's why 48 could be a thing. But yeah, I really do think that the placements or the signs that'll be loudest are Capricorn, Leo, Aries, and Cancer. There will be sign that Virgo is on that as well. So I am going to add Virgo to that list just because I see so much of the Virgo Venus and South Node coming out as maybe this is like a supreme justice type of energy meeting up, the South Node and Venus being like, all right, let's stress everybody out for the positive, right? Seeing that there's so much of the game being about deep-seated emotional intensity or this grand stage of things playing out in the worldly fashion, with the Sagittarius moon being pretty loud in today's game, just because all of that happening and seeing that the Chiefs have this really powerful presence in the fourth house, as well as the Ravens having a powerful presence in the ninth house. I think this is going to really kind of help my research more than anything of being like, okay, so is this really where I want to go? The fourth house is the home team. Ninth house is the travel team. Okay, we're going to see all this. So I'm excited for today's game because I'm going to be learning a lot. We're going to go into the fun charts. So we are going to see we'll go back to the tri-wheel and I'll talk about everything just real recap style at the end. But Patrick has his sun and Chiron and Venus all in the eighth house of today's game. Loosely conjunct the sun as well as loosely conjunct Venus and the South Node for today's game. His moon is in the sixth house, so today's could be an emotionally physical game for him, or he really puts all of his emotions behind the physicality of today's game. I also see that I think his Mars return is going to be loudly on display here, as well as his Mercury return, and it'll be interesting to see how that all matches up with today's game. His Pluto in the 10th house, so I think transformations and maybe changes from the last time he was on the grand stage for the last game where he won 22-9 with his team. The changes and everything else that could be on public display here with his Pluto being in the 10th house, the changes that he's made, the depths that he's gone through, having his Jupiter in the 11th house, in the same sign as today's moon of the game. That can be a pretty solid connection. Jupiter and the moon is always pretty pleasant. But, he also has Vesta conjunct his Jupiter, and Vesta is very much keeping a fire alive. And with Sagittarius already being a fire sign and Jupiter ruling over Sagittarius, it's a very strong placement for a formidable appearance by Patrick Mahomes. Looking at the opposing quarterback, we have Lamar Jackson. And his chart is quite interesting as he has so much, not only Sagittarius, but also Capricorn, right? He's got his Venus and moon in Sagittarius, as well as, the moon. So it's his lunar return today. So the moon today is his lunar return, and that's always a sign of a pretty solid performance. Since we don't have his birth time, this is a noon chart. So, too bad that we don't have his birth time announced, just like Travis Kelce's this week, right? If you missed it, I did talk about Travis Kelce's actual birth time in the beginning of the show, so you can always go back if you're just jumping into the live. The fun part about all of his Capricorn, it is starting in the 12th house, right? 12th house of today's game, his sun is on one side, but then his Jupiter and Neptune are in the first house and loosely conjunct Pluto. Maybe the way that he has a relationship to personal authority, or maybe he steps into his personal authority today with that Jupiter and Capricorn, just because we did talk about how that can kind of be like having blind faith in authority figures or having complicated relationships with authority figures because you believe that you know better. That can definitely be part of Jupiter and Capricorn's journey this lifetime. Seeing that it is loosely conjunct his sun, I call that the Kanye placement when the sun and Jupiter conjunct, just because that's just such a Kanye energy. Like, I love me some me type energy, but it's like in Capricorn versus Gemini, is way more about this craving for legacy, this craving for public recognition and formidable energy, not this like necessarily each and every game, but like knowing that whatever Lamar Jackson does is towards cementing a legacy further than just his personal one. So he's like all about that type of nurturing environment for a big like a team effort, but like being the star of the show. Capricorns do like being the isolated like star, of course, right? But they also like creating a bigger thing than just themselves. They're the champions of accomplishing something and then turning around and being like, okay, what's next? And it's because they have this insatiable drive and this insatiable ability to keep climbing and keep going and then jump into the depths and transform themselves into a better climber behind closed doors. And then they pop out and they're just like, and this goes for 10th house placements too. When they disappear, they're never just like sitting around in silence. It's always, what are they creating behind the scenes? What are they going to step out with next? What is going to be that next energy? So Lamar Jackson could very much show up and show out for his legacy today, if not his legacy, the franchise legacy, just because the Ravens and Chiefs in the last few years, especially with Mahomes at the helm, have been so combative and so back and forth with each other. So it's been a very fun thing to watch. I can't remember the last Ravens and Chiefs game I attended. I think it was in 2019. I was way cooler back in the day. I went out so much more, but now I thoroughly enjoy my life of being cozy at home and with my little family I've created. So it's beautiful. But not being in it, I can just be part of it through the stars. And I think that's even cooler. So that's Lamar Jackson and how he fits in today's game. I think that it's going to be pretty powerful with his Mars and Libra, as well as his North Node conjunct the sun today. If anything, that is a huge boost for prop bets. So he could be going off himself personally today. The Ravens might not win, but Lamar's going to have a hopefully solid start as quarterback, but not too solid. I'm a Chiefs fan, right? Some of the fun charts I have are for other players on the Chiefs. So if you don't want to watch this, then here are the numbers I have for today. Oh yeah, I was going to add some. Okay, looking at Carson Steele, should we add him to today's game? He does have his Venus retrograde on the MC. Mars also in that 8th house. He has his Mercury in the 9th house. Mercury return. Yeah, let's say it. Let's do a 24 and 42. So our numbers to watch for are 1, 5, 18, 24, 42, 55. Let's see. Do I want to add Noah Gray to that? I should honestly just make his chart bigger, so when we do look at it, it'll be better. Yes, I want to add Noah Gray to that list, so I'm going to add the 83, and then we'll look at Kelsey's and see if we want to add him. Just stay tuned for the actual final numbers. Carson Steele is one of the players on the Chiefs that I got his actual birth time from, so I'm pretty proud of that, pretty happy that he was very happy to give that information to me. I'm like, perfect. Wonderful. His MC and Chiron are going to be in the 12th house of today's game, but moving into the 1st house, he has his Neptune and Uranus there. Station retrograde in the 1st house, so it could be a big game for him personally. He could have a few electric moments personally in today's game. His rising is conjunct the part of fortune for today's game as well in pace of game, so who knows. Definitely like his Mars conjunct the sun as well as his Mercury turn being super loud here. So that's what I'm really going for with adding him to numbers to watch for. We'll go ahead and jump to Noah Gray, the other tight end with Travis Kelce. And I know there's another, but I don't have his birth time. So sorry. With Noah Gray, the reason I was like, why do I want to add him to the list of numbers to watch? His Mars retrograde conjunct Mars in Scorpio. He's gone through his Mars return, and Mars retrograde can be a little bit iffy when it comes to quickness and directness the first time, but it can be something that you mature into and grow into. So I do think he's somebody to watch. But that moon on the MC gives me a lot of clues that, yes, I think Noah Gray is going to have a good game today. If not, he's going to be instrumental in some blocking, or he could be instrumental in some actual forward motion today. Who knows? Seeing that his ascendant is in the 12th house as well, we have both him and Carson Steele. If you want to look right back at that. Where is it? Oh, I have to close that one. and Carson Steele both having their angles in that 12th house. So Noah's is the ascendant, Carson's is his MC. But with that being said, Noah is definitely looking strong there in that third house of vocalization and how he shows up. And I feel like he could be a strong leader when it comes to that. Going into the chart that you guys have all been waiting for, Mr. Travis Kelce with his Pluto on the MC. So let's go ahead and add him to the list. We're just going to make these numbers to watch for all Chiefs numbers. I don't know. These could also be Ravens numbers. I do not pay attention to the Ravens or any other team besides the Chiefs. So if they are, it's purely on accident. And if they are Chiefs numbers, sometimes it's also purely on accident. Sometimes I know the numbers. Sometimes I'm like, I don't know who that is. Looking at today's game, Kelce does have his Neptune loosely conjunct the rising, but his part of fortune is conjunct Jupiter in that 7th house. So I do feel like he does have a little bit of a boost there, as well as his Jupiter in the 6th house. Maybe he feels a little bit spicy with his lunar return that just happened, and his moon rules over his Jupiter. So maybe if a certain someone is loudly showing up in the stands for him, possibly could be a help, a boost. Having his Uranus, Saturn, and Neptune all there in the 12th house, we definitely see some signs of being subconsciously frustrated. That can definitely just be the case. And he's been a little bit subconsciously frustrated this whole season. So it's not too much of a change there. His vertex does fall in the 2nd house of today's game. So he could be pivotal for pace of game, whether good or bad, we're going to see. His MC falls in the 5th house of today's game, showing that maybe his creativity and maybe the way he shows up creatively with his hands today makes up for the ways that he didn't show up with his hands previously. So definitely excited to see how this plays out. And I'm going to go back to the tri-wheel of today's game just so we can go over that again. All right, I'm going to write these numbers perfectly in order so I don't stumble over them. And then that way you guys can follow along easier. 83, 87. Okay, so the numbers to watch for today's game are 1, 5, 18. Also, okay, I'm just going to add 11 real quick because that's what I used to get the 55. So 1, 5, 11, 18, 24, 42, 55, 83, and 87. And signs to watch for are Capricorn, Leo, Aries, Cancer, and Virgo. So I'm very excited for today's game. I'm looking forward to seeing how everything turns out, seeing how everything plays out. I'm excited about how everything we do is able to be tracked and followed and interactive with astrology. And sports astrology is just so fun. It involves so many different people. You're welcome to follow along. You're welcome to check out the books that I use. This is Linda Hill's 360 Degrees of Wisdom. If you go onto any of my guidebooks or any of my sites, like I reference her book in this guidebook, the Sabian Symbols guidebook. Once again, it's free on my website, and you can get these in the physical form too. If you just email me and send me your address, I can send them to you. But in the digital form, those links click to Linda Hill's website where you can get the ebook for $22 or the book and oracle cards for, I believe, $55. I'm not 100% sure on that. And so I always reference that to her. If you guys haven't seen this already because you just joined the fun, this is my latest magazine with yours truly on the cover. Hopefully you can see that. You can see my Shadonis ring though, no matter what, and my Shadonis necklace. My sun necklace because it's Sunday. Yay! I absolutely love making this magazine. I have an incredible editor, Mariah, that just absolutely adds so much to the conversation, no matter what the conversation is about. We have our insight here into what it's like to be called a witch. It's 2025 and people call me the witch, and I'm like, I think my ancestors would be proud. Yeah, it's got to. Talk about human intelligence and the gift that human intelligence is. We have profiles on one of my favorite psychologists that just found out about this summer, of course, when Jupiter shifted it into Cancer, I'm like, Marion Woodman is my new personal guru. If you missed it, I have an announcement in this magazine about my new and full moon guide for 2026 coming up. We have an interview with Georgina Rose, Darling. You might know her from YouTube or her various social media channels. She's an incredible occult work and astrology and travel guide and just overall wise human being. We also have Mariah's book with the links and everything to her book and where you can find it there. We have a cool spotlight on a goldsmith, Kedrick Wolf of Ritualis. Very, very cool. And then we have Living with Wisdom and talking about the fall equinox and how that astrology from Virgo to Libra and beautifying your life. And it breaks down things in there. And then we talk about living with nature in an unnatural world and how you can embrace that. I have a poem that I wrote on that side. I don't tell people a lot of the time, but like I do write poems. I do most of the work. If it's not accredited to anyone, it's going to be an article that I wrote, right? So I have so much stuff available on my website through northernastrology.com. I have so many free resources. My magazine that I just showed you is 100% free. I keep things as accessible as humanly possible. I may not have all the time in the world to do the one-on-ones that I would like. You know, I love to help see and navigate as much as I can through astrology and combine that knowledge into a workbook and guidebook that empowers others to really get to know themselves and dare to be a little bit outside the box, which I think is the coolest thing you can do in this day and age, is be radically different than everyone else because you're authentically yourself, because we are all radically different from each other. And that's okay. Astrology helps see people as their own individual galaxies instead of instead of people that you need to dominate or conquer. It's like we can see how we all work together. And I did find that Marcus Aurelius quote that I love so much, and I taped it above my bed. And I am shifting my mindset to the people you meet today will be idiots because they don't know any better, but you know better. And you know that to be mad at another is to be mad at yourself, and it is unnatural and against what you're designed on this earth to be. And that is love and loving each other. And that's all we're supposed to be doing. So if you have fun watching my astrology streams and you like knowing about my insight for sports astrology, you like following along with that, I highly encourage you to check out more of my work, just because I do have a lot of depths. I do have a lot of things that I share, maybe not on the timeline. I'm not somebody that's a super public person these days. I've lived the first half of my life, or actually more than half of my life. I've been what I feel like a public figure since birth, since my dad was number one main character here in Kansas City for so long and was such a big energy and presence that I didn't really grow up in his shadow, but I definitely had a lot to live up to. And with that being said, I kind of share a lot about the things that happen in my time through my magazine. I share parts of myself and parts of my private life through the magazine, because I'm like, if you care enough to download a 50 to 60 page PDF file of information and read about the things that I want to share with the world, then you can have access to parts of me that I might not share with everyone. I feel the same way about my blog. There's so much information about me already out there, and our stories are important. The narratives we share with others, the things we tell ourselves, they are super important in shaping our reality. And if you tell yourself that you're this like little child that, you know, is too afraid to do anything, you will actually embody that. And as someone that had a speech impediment and a general fear of being seen and heard, as well as, you know, a great wound around being seen and heard, being able to be seen and heard and connect with like-minded people has been the greatest gift of the internet. You know, I shared earlier this week, I met my future husband in 2020 and was like, damn, this is a really strange time in my life to meet me. And it was a time that I was going through radical shifts and figuring out where I wanted to be, and if I wanted to continue fragmenting parts of myself into online characters like my former media personality that I concocted and ran with for years. I think a decade actually. So there's that. There's just so much of yourself that can be told through your creations and the things that you put your energy into and the art you create, the journals you write, the books you write. I learned more about myself from my old journal entries than I ever could from a therapist, even though I have one. I like to use my therapist for what's currently bogging down my mind. I like to use my journal entries for what is, in my soul and what I have written about myself and how I can reframe that and how I can blend that into who I currently am and how I can honor those parts of myself that don't really serve me now. And that's okay too. It's all about finding that balance and it's all about finding that inner compass within. And I think that's exactly what astrology does. So I am super grateful to have been yapping your ear off for 2 hours now. So I'm going to let my voice take a break and the rest of me and head on out. But thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for your interest in what I do each week. Thank you so much for supporting the things that I create and the books that I create and the materials I create. And for those of you that book readings with me, I greatly appreciate you trusting me with your personal information, and I treat that like a treasure trove. I do not share that with anyone. I do not talk about my clients on social media. I think it's so tacky to be like, oh, I had a client with this today, and then sharing clients' charts. It's like, oh my God, stop. That gives me the ick. So whatever gives you the ick can be your ick thing, but being overzealous with like talking about clients has never been my thing. I'm never going to be like, I'm so and so as astrologer. It is what it is. When people find me, it is a gift. When I get to work with people on a one-on-one basis, it is a true deep dive experience no matter what reading you book with me, and I fully and completely give you my utmost and most, I would say my utmost insightful knowledge of whatever I've downloaded over the years. And the beauty of having an astrologer that simply reads and keeps to herself is that I'm not involved with a bunch of drama. The Pentagon is not suing me. And yeah, more and more people seem to be willing to work and collaborate with people that are like in motion already. So I'm excited to see where this football season takes me. But for now, go Chiefs. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next Chiefs game, which I believe is a